Alright, we're going to take a quick look at probability. Most people did not have a lot of trouble with this when we looked at it actually on the Goofy Kahoot the other day, but let's take a look. There's a little bit of definitions here that we should know. And so let's start off with just kind of three key terms that you should know. Probability is simply a mathematical, that is not a nice A, there we go, it got better, but okay, let's try this again, because that's just brutal. In fact, I can type that quicker and neater. A mathematical way of calculating the chance of an event occurring. Right? So when we talk about probability, we're using math in some way to figure out how likely it is that something will happen. You can even spell it correctly. There it is. Alright. This takes us on then when we look at outcome. Outcome is the result of a probability experiment. Or a result of a probability experiment. Right? So if we're looking at, for example, tossing a coin, there's two possible outcomes. Let's put a comma after that, or a result, comma, of a probability experiment. Two possible outcomes if we flip a coin. One outcome would be heads, the other outcome would be tails. Right? Or we roll a dice, there's 6 possible outcomes. Right, so the or a result of a probability experiment. Right, or you could, I don't know, somehow in math questions we always end up with things talking about, unmatched socks in a drawer, and you reach in there in the dark, and you have a red sock and a black sock and a white sock. And how many times do you have to reach in until you get a pair of matching socks or something? I mean, you could turn on the light, or you could fold your socks and put them together in pairs. But beside the point, outcome would be what sock do you pull out of the drawer blind, I guess, if we're doing something like that. Back on track. Favorable outcome is the outcome or the desired result. Right, so if we're saying, well, what's the probability of me tossing a coin and ending up with a head? Well, then the favorable outcome is the one that I want. So the desired result, that's our favorable outcome. Alright, so let's take a quick peek here then. Pause if you need to finish getting your definitions down. And let's take a look down here. Representing probabilities. Different ways we can do these. We can represent them as fractions, as ratios, or as percents. Generally, fractions are the easiest way, and they're the one that we want. So, what is the probability of spinning an A? So, mathematically, as you can see over here on the side, we can write, instead of the probability of spinning an A equals, we can write the shorthand of P for probability and A in brackets, saying probability of A happening is equal to, well, how many outcomes of A? Well, there's only, if we look on the spinner, there's only one way we can get an A, and because there's only one section of the pie that has an A showing, so that's going to be 1. And then we look, so that's one favorable outcome out of how many total outcomes? Well, total outcomes, we could have A or a K or an S, and you can look around and it actually spells skate. Or steak, I suppose. Anyway, sorry, there's 5 total outcomes, so 1 out of 5. Alright, perfect. There we have it as a fraction. Alright, we could write this as a ratio, right? 1 to 5. And we could also write this, we can convert this into a percentage, right? So, we've done this before. 1 divided by 5, that's on our calculator. 0.2, multiply that by 100, and we get 20%. Right, which takes us on to the next one here. What's the probability of spinning a vowel? Let's bring some language arts in here. So probability of, and we're going to write it. Probability of a vowel is equal. Well, we found out how many desired outcomes are there. How many favorable outcomes? Well, there's 2 vowels. So 2 out of a grand total of 5. And again, I can write that as a 2 to 5 ratio. Apparently I'll write that very big. I can also take my fraction and convert that to a decimal. Becomes 0.4, multiply that by 100, and I end up with 40%. Alright, now that takes us on to the next bit. So, what is the probability of spinning a Q? I'm just going to scroll back up here before I start writing it down. Do you see a Q on this? Because I don't. So the probability of spinning a Q, it's not like, well, I could spin it and maybe the ink will magically change to a Q. No, that's not going to happen. So the probability in that spinner, or on that spinner experiment, probability of spinning a Q is going to be equal to, well, we look at how many favorable outcomes. There are 0. So 0 out of 5. Which means, I guess, if as a ratio, 0 to 5, and this is an easy one to convert to a percent, it's going to be 0%. Right? So that takes us on to the next bit. Bag contains 10 marbles. There it is. Show the probability of the following events as a fraction, a ratio, and a percent. So selecting a red marble. Well, first of all, we need to figure out how many possible outcomes. So we've got a bag full of marbles. I see 1 green, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red, and 3 blue. So the probability of selecting a red. How many favorable outcomes are there? Well, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of them out of 10. Which again, it's a 6 to 10 ratio. I can go 6 divided by 10. That's going to give me 60%. Sorry, 0.6, which I convert to 60%. Alright. Which then takes us on selecting a red or blue or green. So, if I look at this, selecting a red or blue or green. Guess what? In that case, I've got 10 choices. I have 10 favorable outcomes. So, if I'm going to be picking a marble out of this bag, fraction-wise, 10 out of 10, 10 to 10 ratio, or 100% probability, if we want to talk about it that way. Okay, probability of not selecting a red marble, so probability of not red. So how many in there are not red? Well, I look at this and say, oh, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that are not red. So that's 4 out of a grand total of 10 are not red. Okay, that's going to be 40%. Again, I converted my fraction to a decimal and then multiplied that by 100. Or I could say, well, it's a ratio of 4 to 10. And that would work as well. Pause if you need to if I've gone too quick here. Get your examples down. That takes you on to your assignment. Okay, so this will be spread out over 2 days. There is this. This is essentially going to be 1 day's worth of assignment, and we'll talk about this more in class. But the second day's assignment is going to be the little worksheet that's in there, and we'll talk about which ones I'm expecting for marks on that. Again, once we are in class. Thank you.